Hello again, everyone. My name is David Bastel alongside AREA President David Oikel, and this is the Real Estate Edition podcast. Today, we talk to mindfulness and meditation teacher Reena Ruparelia, and we talk about topics like tech detox, togetherness in the pandemic. And David, so good to work with you for the first time here on the podcast. What were some of your takeaways when we talked to Reena?
Well, it's really terrific, Dave, to listen to her because it's been a year since the pandemic began. Our lives changed then very, very drastically. And to get tips on mental health and mindfulness and work-life balance, all of the things that are so important to realtors and all of us, it was a really terrific chat.
Reena Ruparelia is our guest on the Real Estate Edition podcast.
You're listening to this month's episode of The Real Estate Edition with host Dave Bastel and AREA President David Oikel.
Reena, so good to talk to you. Can you tell us first a little bit about yourself? Our listeners are very interested in knowing just some of your background as we enter this interview.
Sure. So I'm a former HR professional turned mindfulness and meditation teacher. And I believe that when we wake up to the present moment, we wake up to our life. And when we wake up to our life, then we're able to take the steps we need to move us forward on our path towards feeling good and doing our best each and every day. So for me, I came into mindfulness in 2012. I was burnt out from work. I was really sick. I live with an inflammatory skin condition called psoriasis. And I was just at the point where nothing was working for me. So I attended a 10-day silent retreat and definitely a bootcamp introduction to meditation and mindfulness. But it did help me open my eyes and really tap into the present moment, which has really helped me turn my life around and even my health around. And since then, I've been sharing meditation and mindfulness with organizations and individuals to support them on their mental health and emotional journeys.
So you could say, in a sense, that boot camp was almost a life changer for yourself, wasn't it?
Absolutely. A huge change in the way that I looked at the world. And although my circumstances stayed the same, I changed. I love the quote by Wayne Dyer, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so that definitely happened to me during that time.
So, Reena, you gave a little bit of an introduction to mindfulness, but for those of us that don't know enough about it, what else can you tell us about it as an introduction to the listeners?
Absolutely. So I like to think of mindfulness as a way of being and a way of thinking. So when we're mindful, we focus our attention on what is happening in our body, our mind, and the environment in this moment. So with mindfulness, we live in the present, right? We're focused on what's happening right now. And we do so with a certain attitude. I like to think of it as doing so with patience, curiosity, awareness. Mindfulness helps us slow down. Mindfulness helps us slow down, pay attention, and respond to life with awareness and intention.
Staying present, Reena, and focused has always been a struggle for some, just kind of staying in that moment and being there. What's the difference now that's causing a shift in our ability to stay present and focused because of what's happening in our world, especially we're coming up on 1 year of this horrendous pandemic?
Can't believe it's already been a year. Yeah. So from what I've seen with myself and those that I work with, it's always been tough to pay attention, right? And focus. I mean, sitting in silence for even 10 seconds can be so difficult, right? To keep our awareness and our attention in one place, right? Our minds get quickly hijacked by planning, worrying, daydreaming, remembering. So now with the pandemic, I think many of us are in this kind of heightened state of fear, right? We're in this fight or flight mode, fearing what's to come, what lies ahead, and our minds are constantly churning with worry. So, of course, I think that's going to impact our ability to stay present and focus more now than ever. But I think this is where mindfulness and having a mindfulness practice can really help.
So then, what are some tips on somebody listening to this going, okay, Reena, what can I do myself at home on a home sense of what you were just mentioning?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really, really important for us to deliberately choose every day to be present and to live in today, right? To do the best we can do in the here and the now. I think we also have to acknowledge that this moment, this day is all we ever have. And although we can't control what's going on outside of us, we can control what's happening inside of us, right? From the way that we think to how we act and show up in the world, how we respond to challenges. So I think it's really important for us to choose, like I said, the operative word here, to live in day-tight compartments. That's a concept by Dale Carnegie, right? So for me, what's really been helpful in keeping me in today is having a routine, a schedule, right? Priming my mind every morning for the day ahead. And I believe how we start the day is so important to the kind of day we're going to have. I think it's Tony Robbins again that says, where focus goes, energy flows. So for me, a big part is like avoiding the phone first thing in the morning. I got an alarm clock about a year ago, and that's been a life changer for me.
Old school, I like it.
So that means, no, I'm going back to the old school, right? I sleep with my phone in another room, so I'm not waking up and kind of scrolling on everyone else's agenda. And I like to also set an intention for the day. So I like to pick a word. So today my word is ease. And so I remind myself of that often. And then I also like to review the day when it's done, right? So acknowledging what went well, who I saw today, what I want to let go of. Because it can feel like Groundhog Day going through this pandemic.
Yeah.
And so when I start to notice even the micro changes that are different in each day, it kind of helps me stay in today, realize that there's still good here as well.
I just want to further that. Do you ever checklist what you want to do in a day, almost like some people would do with a grocery list or something of that nature, where this is what I want to accomplish today, and this is what I'd like to see at the end when I make the review?
Absolutely. So I love to set the intention for the night before. So kind of writing down 5 things I'd like to get done the next day. And that could also, during the pandemic, it's also included not just professional goals, but personal health goals, like getting outside, making sure that I'm getting my movement in, that I'm communicating, that I'm eating in a certain way. Those things really matter in helping me feel good. But yes, I absolutely do a checklist every day. And also, if I don't fulfill all 5 of those things, knowing that I can carry it over to the next day, right? Not giving myself a hard time, but absolutely, it helps me live more intentionally and in this day, for sure.
So, Reena, expanding on that, I think it's safe to say everyone's mental health has been stressed during this pandemic. What have you found has worked for you, in addition to maybe those few tips that you just mentioned, to stay mentally healthy at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so important for me. I'm someone who's lived alone for most of the pandemic. And so there's been a lot of ups and downs. But in order for me to stay mentally healthy, I've really had to be strict, like I call it with my mental hygiene, right? So I'm tending to my mind. I found in December, I started to slip, right? I started ignoring that evening and morning routine we were talking about. I wasn't getting in the exercise, ordering lots of takeout, scrolling late nights on the phone, right? So kind of all of the things that I would preach not to do, I was doing them. And so I noticed how terrible I felt a couple of weeks into it and how much I needed to put structure back into my life. And so, like I said, I love to review the day, set the intentions for the day. So I take those moments every day. But then also really starting to set some personal challenges for myself. I started running. That was a big one, right? So kind of setting that goal, cutting out things like alcohol during the week, and kind of keeping it onto the weekends, getting in the movement every day, taking time to connect with people that I love, and also disconnecting from my work, because I work for myself as well. So I find that I'd be working all the time. So really bringing in structure has been super helpful during this time.
So I think that just on that one, I think that one of the things that I found is I've been pretty good this year, but to be perfect for 365 days on all this stuff is really a challenge. And so, I've had a couple of days where I haven't been perfect, and I feel like I've been a failure after I've been pretty good for a couple of months. So I think we have to be kind to ourselves and give ourselves a little bit of credit, because it's been challenging for sure.
I think that's super important, right? It's giving ourselves that self-compassion to actually acknowledge this is a difficult time. And even the small steps that we're taking every day are making a difference. So, for example, when I am reviewing my day, one of the things I love to do is look at what I accomplished that day. And that could be the smallest thing, from getting enough water in to going for a small walk, or returning emails within a reasonable time, to putting away my work at 9 p.m. So I'm really trying to acknowledge what's good every day and give myself that credit, because I was finding, especially before, when I wasn't doing this, and I'm going to bed looking at what I haven't done, what I still have to do tomorrow, where I'm coming up short. So it's been really, really important to bring attention to what's good and what is going well.
I'm not really breaking any news here for the three of us when I say businesses have had a very big struggle during the pandemic. And when businesses struggle, there's easily an excuse to have a negative sort of feeling towards a lot of different things. How can business owners shift that negative space into a positive one, even though the last year for them has been very, very bleak at times?
Oh, I can feel that on such a personal level as well. I feel so much for all of us who are going through this, because this has happened for me personally. A lot of my business was in-person seminars. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, I had a lot of cancellations and my income just went down low. And so it's been a deliberate choice for me not to let myself go down that rabbit hole of worry. I have to remind myself, and I hope that we all do this, that worry is not going to give us a better future, right? If anything, it's going to rob us of today. And optimism, right? Choosing positive thoughts and optimistic thoughts are a choice, and our mindset is in our hands. We have a choice each and every day to choose what we're going to think, how we're going to move forward in the world. And thinking of what we don't want isn't going to help us get what we do want. Right. So it's up to us to work on our mindset. And I think this is where mindfulness specifically can really help, because it helps us notice the thoughts we're having and tune into how we're feeling. And so once we kind of have that baseline, we can then start to take action on those areas to change the thoughts that aren't helpful. And so I use mindset work to turn my negative or destructive thoughts into better ones. Right. So if I'm thinking, my business is failing, I'm failing, nothing's ever going to work out, right? That happens often. I start to notice that. And I don't judge myself for having that thought, but I notice that the thought is there. And then I decide to ask myself a better question, or maybe replace it with an affirmation. So perhaps, how can I best support myself, serve my clients, and show up in a way that makes me feel proud? I ask myself that question, and that opens up a more expansive view. Or maybe even an affirmation that I'd repeat during my morning routine. I am successful and my business is doing amazing. I serve my clients with intention and to the best of my ability, right? I know that worry and negative thinking isn't going to get me where I want. And I love the quote that worry is a misuse of the imagination, right? We have an imagination. So why don't we build a future that we want versus what we don't? And it's really up to us to kind of tune into our minds and remind ourselves that where we are today isn't where we will always be. And by being mindful, aware of the thoughts that bring us down or don't help us grow, we can then shift to having new thoughts, right? Planting a garden in our minds versus a graveyard.
Yeah.
Like I like to think of it. Yeah.
We will be back after this short break.
Join the AREA Realtor research community to have your say when it comes to the services AREA provides, the recommendations we make to the government, and the strategic priorities of the association. You'll receive exclusive content and be entered into monthly draws every time you complete a survey. Visit joinarearesearch.com to sign up and join an exclusive community of realtors making a difference. joinarearesearch.com.
So, Reena, I know I've been talking to a lot of people around the province this year, and markets are extremely busy, extremely competitive. And as realtors, we're navigating two sides of things. Buyers who are sometimes finding it difficult to buy a home because prices are rising, and sellers who are saying, is this the right time? So, and everybody's anxious for making the right decision. How do we stay focused on the good in what's going on today without sort of anxious worry about what's happening in the future, as we're talking to clients in very stressful situations?
Yeah, I'm going through the process of selling my home right now. And it is a really stressful time. And I have so much empathy for my realtor and who's been there for me in such a beautiful way. But I think I would say the same thing as I just said, in that we have to deliberately choose to stay focused, right? And have this optimistic mindset, looking at our clients, serving them to the best of our ability. We only have control over what we think and how we respond to life. And so again, I would ask myself that same question: how can I show up as the best version of me today? How can I be of best service to my clients? And I think this will keep us connected to ourselves, but also help us to be more creative and also expansive in the way that we're serving our communities. But definitely, I can empathize in that it's a very difficult time, and it's just up to us to keep our mindset in the right place, so that we can show up as the best version of ourselves.
Well, let's talk about that stress then that you are feeling, because right now the market is piping hot across Ontario, across Canada. You're selling a property right now. What is personally going through your mind with everything that's happening and the stress of what is most people in their lives the largest investment they will ever make?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I put my house up last year, March, and I took it down because I was feeling super nervous. And I decided to put it up recently because I wanted to try again. And I would say the thing that's helped me through all of this is my realtor, because my emotions have been all over the place. And the thing I really love about my realtor, who I've been working with now for a year, through all of my doubts and my ups and my downs, is I love the way that he communicated with me with confidence. Right? He gave me an idea of what the market's like, what he thinks the strategy should be. He was so calm and kind of put together and very supportive at the same time. So if I was changing my mind, I could feel that steadiness within him. So I have the confidence now to go back to him and go through this. But I think for my realtor, acknowledging and being upfront with the state of the market really put me at ease. And then being there and reassuring me through it every step of the way really put me gave me that level of comfort that I'm doing the right thing, and also has built this loyalty within me, because he didn't just disappear when I didn't sell my house in March and took it off the market. He followed up with me every month. He maintained that relationship. And I think that made a really big difference in me feeling good. And I think, in order for us to do that, and probably in order for him to do that, he must be taking care of himself and prioritizing his mental health, because he was like unshakable through this whole thing and very deliberate. And I'm so, so grateful for that, because I don't think I'd feel as good about this decision if I didn't have that support.
So, Reena, you mentioned this in your own business. Realtors are doing business differently. A lot of virtual, a lot of discussion with clients like this instead of over the kitchen table. And different ways of interacting and signing documents electronically. What are additional tips that you might give about how we're doing business differently and maybe not as face-to-face as some people are typically used to?
Yeah, I mean, I can just imagine, right? Everything changing, just like for me. I first had to acknowledge that things have changed, and also that it's been tough for me and for so many, right? Acceptance was that first step kind of for me to say things have been different. And when we accept something, mindfulness is really big with this, right? You get to this place of acceptance that things are changing and probably will continue to change. And I remind myself, when I accept that change is here, it doesn't mean I'm complacent, but instead I'm making room for all that's going on, right? And that can be really, really, really difficult for some of us. And I think just knowing that all of us are going through this together brings some level of comfort, right? Because even your clients are going through a different change. We're all going through this transition. And so kind of working together, being upfront. And I love bringing some humor to it as well, right? To say, this is really different than we've done it, but let's do this together. Let's work through this together. And I think just knowing that we're not alone going through this process has been really helpful. And again, I think it's from this place when we accept that we're able to then take the steps we need to move forward in a way that's creative, that's innovative. And when we ask those questions, right, how can I best support my clients? We're able to show up in a way that's constructive. Absolutely. So
you talk about the togetherness, and it really leads me into my next question in a big way, where we're talking about a work-life balance. Many of us are living at home, working at home during this last year. And it has been challenging because some of us have kids. I have two girls that are doing online schooling. My wife is also working at home. I'm working at home. So there has to be some sort of work-life balance between. What are some tips that not only I could use, but many people listening that are in the exact same situation where they have to manage the work-life boundaries and balances?
Oh, yeah. And I think realtors probably have felt this for a long time because they're always on the clock, right? Phone calls all the time. And I would say, even Dave, I'm sure you probably have a lot of insight in this area as well. But I think it's first acknowledging that having balance is essential for us feeling good and doing the work we need to do. It's also accepting that some days we can't do it all. Some days things won't go as planned. They won't be perfect. So giving yourself the grace to do things differently. I think it's also really important, and I found this with a lot of my friends who have families, setting aside time to take care of yourself, right? Putting it in the calendar, whether that's a walk, maybe agreeing with your partner if that's possible to say, I really want to have this time, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. Some of my friends lock themselves in the bathroom. I don't know if that's a parent thing, but just to get some sort of break. But I think it's really remembering as well on the times when it gets really tough that this won't last forever, right? That things will change, and just to do the best that you can each and every day. Because sometimes the balance is not going to be there, but trying to prioritize and really make room for it will be really important.
It's been a year since the pandemic began. Is it possible that we can't remember what strong mental health feels like?
Oh, wow. I have to say, perhaps. I think there is more acknowledgement now of mental health than there was previously. I would go and talk to companies before, and this seemed to be a nice to have versus a must have. And now it's become a priority. I would argue that our mental health has always been something that's been important, but maybe we just haven't been as aware of how important it is. So I know for myself that my mental health is really improved, and I've seen people prioritize it and talk about it more now than ever. So perhaps I sometimes do forget what it used to feel like, but what's really great now is that we're able to actually talk about it and work together and find ways to work through it. So we're all adapting and doing the best that we can.
No, it's a really good point about acknowledging it, because at AREA, early on we were talking to our clients and our boards, and one of the things that we heard loud and clear was that people were concerned about this, and we've really taken an active effort to give seminars like this, and then also an assistance program that realtors can call into, because we've really valued that. And so I think that I think we're not alone in that. And I think organizations have really paid attention to that this year. And so if something good comes out of this, it's hopefully that caring is here to stay.
It's wonderful. That's wonderful.
You talked about at the beginning of this interview, and I don't know anybody that isn't in this same boat, but you're at home. A lot of places across Canada, Ontario itself, under lockdown at times. Sometimes they're not. How hard is it, and how can you pry yourself away from tech devices? Because we're inundated with our laptops, our tablets, our phones. Everybody has sometimes two or three of each, but it can be damaging at times too to your mental health and your well-being. And how do we allow ourselves to stay back from something that's been so part of our lives, where we're almost more tempted to do it, considering that we don't have the options of going outside and doing this and shopping and going to all these terrific events that we normally would?
Yeah, I think it's about realizing that and setting some boundaries around our tech. And I've always preached this, I think, even before the pandemic. And then I think during the pandemic, the social dilemma came out. So a lot of people were talking about that, right? About, about technology. But I've always encouraged tech detox or taking time away from our phones. And so some of the things that have really helped me, the one that I talked about earlier, was that I sleep with my phone in another room so that when I wake up, I'm not, in the middle of the night, I'm not picking the phone up and starting to scroll. I also believe, with blue light, putting the phone away before bed, at least an hour. Again, I know it's easy to say. We have to really make the choice to do it. But putting my phone away an hour before bed is a wonderful goal to work towards, because that means I'm giving myself time to wind down. I also think ending my day in a different way can be helpful. Another thing, you mentioned, Dave, that you have a family. So having I don't know if everyone has their screens out during your meals, but maybe having a meal once a day where everyone puts their screens away and you guys have a little bit of a different type of discussion. And then I also have limits on my phone, right? So Instagram, for example, if I'm on it more than 30 minutes, it locks me out. Or if I'm checking my emails at a certain time, it locks me out. And I totally appreciate that realtors are always on, right? That they're on call. But I think there has to be some boundaries in terms of tech use, and communicating that ahead of time with clients can be really helpful. My realtor said the same thing. If he's not answering an email after 9 p.m., I'm okay with that, unless we're going through a really crucial time. So kind of setting some limits, having time away from the screens, and also putting the phone away before bed are a few ways that I manage my tech use. Even when I go out for a walk, not taking my headphones with me.
Yeah.
Allowing myself, I can take my phone for emergencies, but maybe just keeping the internet off completely, so I'm getting no notifications, and taking the time to really listen, look around. Mindfulness is wonderful in this way, in that we can ground through our senses, right? So looking around, listening, really smelling the air, feeling things, it could really help us have a different connection and remember a life before phones, which I honestly can't now, but remembering that there's still life happening around us and not only on our screens can be helpful.
So, Reena, how do you make the proper separation from your workspace and your living space so that they can be separate? And how do you work that balance to the best of your ability?
Yeah, this is a big one for me because I live in a really small condo. And so I have a designated area where I work, and it took me a really long time to figure this out. So I don't have the luxury of having a bunch of separate rooms. It ends up being just one big room. But I do have one area that when I walk into that space, it's my work mode, right? It's my desk with my chair. And when I leave it, I clean it up, and there's nothing else that happens on that desk. I don't watch any TV there. I don't socialize there. That small desk is the most important. And where I set it up by the window. So I have a lot of natural light coming in. I try to have a plant that makes it look nice, positive things, right? For when my mind starts going out of order. But creating that space has been huge for me, and setting that boundary. And again, if you don't have the luxury of having a separate space or a separate desk to work in, putting things away when you're finished, so that the computer's not always open. You're not always ready for business. We really have to be intentional in kind of separating that space. And that's been very helpful for me.
Do you have any recommendations? Because we hear about it from time to time. Oh, you gotta try this. You gotta try this. There's a lot of different apps out there, and I know you have to be careful of how much time you spend on your device. But there are apps out there that could help with mindfulness, to practice mindfulness, to help you kind of de-stress and so forth. Do you have any recommendations for our listeners of anything that you use personally or have heard good recommendations about?
Sure. I have two apps that I love. And the first one is called Insight Timer, which is really popular. And there's such great teachers on there, a bunch of different talks, a lot of different mindfulness practices and meditations, all for free. I love that app in terms of the meditation app. When I find that I need to reframe thoughts, though, sometimes, it's our minds are going out of control, and sitting in a quiet meditation or listening to something insightful is not the right thing. So I also use an app which was recommended by my therapist, which is called Fear Tools. And so Fear Tools gives me a chance to kind of write out a thought that may be difficult, right? Something that's causing me a lot of anxiety, and then work through that thought and reframe it. So there's a bunch of prompts and questions. So I love that app. That's a really good one as well. And I also set reminders on my phone, right? So using the phone for good every hour, like I said, stand up, look around you. What are you thinking right now? And these are kind of ways to keep my mind primed and present.
Reena, this has been fantastic, and I've learned so much. Do you have any final words, perhaps, that you haven't got to that you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
Sure. I wanted to say, although it may feel like it, this time won't last forever. And so while we have the time, let's give ourselves the gift of really being here, of being present, of taking time to really breathe, taking in the good that is going on around us, the people we love, the things we love to do, all of the things that are blessings. And let's remember that perhaps the best is yet to come. That's what I always tell myself. The best is yet to come. So may we be well. Thank you so much, Dave and David. I appreciate it.
That was a great chat with Reena about mindfulness and mental health. Just before we go, I want to remind you all that all AREA members and their families have access to LifeWorks by Morneau Chappelle, a 24/7 well-being solution. The program provides access to mental health and financial, physical, and social support programs. LifeWorks is available at no cost, 24/7, 365 days a year, and can help you and your family deal with a wide range of personal and work issues. For more information or to access the service, please visit www.areacovid19info.com/relief. And last but not least, I want to remind you that the deadline to apply for an AREA committee or to join the Mentor to Mentee Connection program is coming up on March the 12th, 2021. You can visit area.com for more information. Well, that's it for today. For AREA President David Oikel and myself, David Bastel, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Visit area.com/podcast for more information, links, and a full list of our episodes to date. New episodes are out the second Tuesday of every month.